One situation you might run into during ACM is an additional bandit entering the fray. So far in this series on air combat maneuvering, we've talked about winning the fight against one adversary. But what do we do when another one shows up? We'll answer that question in this video. During a fast-turning fight, a new bandit could come from any direction. That's why it's important for the support fighter to clear the fight for other adversaries. When we talk about clearing, we mean looking at a section of airspace around our aircraft for potential danger. Outside of combat, this means looking for other aircraft that might collide with our own and also watching the terrain. But in an ACM engagement, the primary danger is enemy aircraft. An enemy wants to maneuver to get us into a high probability of kill weapons engagement zone, or high PK WEZ. The Air Force describes that zone like this. A potential bandit wants to get here. So that's where we'll look first. And then we'll scan in a zigzag pattern through the area that the bandit has to cover on the way into the high PK WEZ. As a support fighter, you'll also need to check this zone on the engaged fighter. Being engaged means that he's going to be focused on BFM with the bandit. As a good wingman, you want to help him out by clearing that blind spot behind him. So as a support fighter, you don't want to get tunnel vision on the known bandit. You'll need to train yourself to look away and clear the area around the fight. This is one of those processes that has to be practiced to become a habit. If you always train with just one bandit, then it'll become a habit to not watch for more. We have a way to practice this in the free mission we used in the last video. If you remember back to that video, there was a set of options for wildcards in the radio menu. What this will do is bring in extra bandits to give you an opportunity to scan the skies for them. These extra wildcard bandits won't appear right away. You'll only see one at first, just like in our previous exercises. But as the fight goes on, they'll flow in one at a time. Use all the ACM skills you've picked up so far to work on the initial bandit. Just expect more friends to arrive later. Every 30 to 60 seconds, another bandit will arrive in the area. Unlike our previous scenarios, these new bandits will come in from a random direction somewhere in this big circle around the X-shaped airfield. These wildcards are not an endless stream. You can expect to face 1, 2, or even 3 of them. But you won't know how many until you shoot down the last one. Then you'll get an all-clear message like this. The point here is to get accustomed to clearing the airspace around the fight, and to do so until you're sure it's safe. There are 2 different types of wildcard scenarios in this map. The first one you should try is this one. This option will only spawn F5s painted in MiG-28 colors equipped only with guns. If you want to increase the challenge, then you can pick the other wildcard option. The random wildcard option will randomly pick from the list of available bandits you see in the rest of the radio menu. So during this fight, you might come across a MiG-15, and later on a Fulcrum could join the fight. It could be any combination of available bandits. No matter which scenario you choose, it's always important to have a short debrief after each set. A good simple way to do this is to answer these questions. How was the pre-merge formation? Did you deny the bandit a tally 2? Were engaged and support fighter roles properly established? Was a visual ID called before any shots were taken? Did we hear a proper kill call? Was there a separation call after the engagement? And lastly, we want to know how our timer looked compared to previous engagements. Remember, our goal is to keep this under 30 seconds. Going over these questions, you'll see if you've improved or if there are areas you need to work on. 2 common problems you want to watch out for are spacing and inadvertently flowing into fighting wing. When you enter into an ACM engagement, you want to have proper spacing between fighters. If you're too close, you'll have to spend extra time aligning turn circles. In ACM, we're always striving for a quick kill, so we don't want to needlessly burn time. If you're too far apart, then you won't have an issue getting a good angle on the bandit, but you'll be too far away to capitalize on it. More importantly, you could lose visual on your wingman and not be able to provide support. Tactical formation like line abreast with the flow into a bracket, which is what we went over in the last video, that should work for most engagements. Later on, if you move to a newer generation fighter, you'll be able to move farther out using sensors to maintain SA on your wingman. But in the F5, you'll be limited to how far you can see. The other common problem is inadvertently entering into fighting wing. In the first video in this series, we talked about the fighting wing doctrine, where the wingman just followed the flight lead around the fight, while the flight lead did all the work of getting the kill. As a support fighter, you're given the freedom to move away from the flight lead to help expedite the kill. But if you don't use it and end up on the same plane of motion as the engaged fighter, you end up in an engagement where it looks like both of you are flying a fighting wing game plan. In this scenario, both the engaged and support fighter fly the same exact path while trying to get the kill. Doing this, you won't leverage that extra freedom that the support fighter has. So in essence, you're using the fighting wing doctrine. It's surprisingly easy to fall into this trap. If you ever find yourself in this position as a support fighter, then you need to get out of the engaged fighter's plane of motion. By staying there, you're not doing anything that the engaged fighter can't do. So you're not shortening the time to a kill. The solution is to get off the engaged fighter's turn circle and try something new. Remember that deconfliction is the support fighter's responsibility. So if you're in the support role, then it's up to you to recognize this problem and fix it. One scenario we haven't discussed is this one. This is 2 versus 2 without a clear advantage for either side. This is a common setup for a competitive match, but it's not very realistic. I'm certain I'm going to get questions on this, so I wanted to mention it. In this scenario, you would still establish an engaged and a support fighter. That's the USAF's doctrinal answer. Now this is incredibly hard on the support fighter because he would have to keep track of not only the engaged fighter, but also 2 bandits that are maneuvering independently. So it's likely to turn into 2 1 versus 1 engagements, with each fighter trying to maintain their responsibilities. As you've probably guessed, this isn't ideal. In the real world, a flight of fighters would avoid entering into ACM this way. They would use beyond visual range ordnance or intercept geometry to give them an advantage in the merge. But those are both topics for another video. In the meantime, you should practice by flying the wildcard scenarios in our exercise. Air combat skills are like muscles. They need to be exercised regularly to stay strong. If you let them go too long, they'll atrophy. So use the free ACM mission like a gym to build up your ACM skills and keep them strong. That mission is designed to get you straight to the important parts with the minimum of setup. In the next video, we'll cover what to do when you find a bandit in your rear quarter. We'll also talk about what steps you should take if the bandit switches targets in the middle of a fight. So let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.